And so the question I always had is, can culture actually make an impact to your bottom line? And I'll leave it up to you to decide whether or not that inflection point in 2014 has made a difference to where we are now. But you can see the fundamental shift in our financials for the previous 20 years to what happened in 2014 and changing the culture and that's actually done for innovation, because culture doesn't hit the bottom line, but innovation does, and that's what we were able to change by bringing in this new model. Now, often when I have innovation conversations with customers, they're like, great, what new tool should we buy? And I work for Microsoft, so I'm like, cool, buy the stuff. But I want to be honest, like, innovation isn't the tools that you use. And I often see customers thinking about it in those terms, and I would love to, if you take one thing away, innovation isn't the tools that you use. And we think about three key elements when we're trying to unlock innovation within Microsoft. And so we have these three lenses, and I'm going to come back to balanced, because this for us, we have a term for it, we call it full spectrum innovation. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into what full spectrum innovation is. But we think about multidisciplinary, and I think every organisation in this room is thinking about diverse teams, how can we be more inclusive? I don't think there's a single organisation I've spoken to in the last 2 years who's been like, no, we want to exclude a whole group of people from our organisation. Everyone wants different insights coming in. But what I often see is we're not being as conscious about how we include that as part of innovation. And Microsoft's done this as well, so we wanted to think about how do you do storage on servers differently? Like, what would a whole new way of doing that be? And we put together an engineering team, they spent 2 years working on it, and they came up with nothing. And we suddenly realized that we had a great team, really, really smart people, but they all came from the same background. They'd all been trained in the same thing, and so they were all looking at it exactly the same way. And so instead we mixed in optical engineers, some people from mining backgrounds, and came up with what we call Project Silica, which is the ability to store data on quartz sheets, basically. And so I use that as an example because often we forget that when we're trying to build this innovation, we bring together teams that have always worked together, and there is that potential for groupthink. And so diversity of background, thought, any of those different diverse perspectives will help you innovate more, and being conscious of it and creating those moments of tension, because it's hard. People aren't going to agree and it feels really uncomfortable and awkward, but it's really powerful as well. And the other one is connected, and I'm seeing this emerge more and more in our customer conversations, where people are looking to different groups, different industries, different partners to help them innovate. And the term I've heard coined recently is co-opetition. So where maybe you're collaborating with your competition in order to find opportunities for innovation together. So you can both go further by collaborating on something. And so we think about this connection really carefully. You'll see Microsoft's had a lot of partnerships recently with organizations like Meta that people have been like, what? Previously that would be something we would never do. But it serves a really great purpose for us in terms of driving us to do things differently. So we think connection as part of building that culture of innovation is really critical. Who are your partners and what do they bring, and how can you do that differently? So as I said, I'm going to go a little bit deeper on what that balanced piece looks like. And if I come back to that theme around perpetual innovation, effectively what we're talking about is the innovator's dilemma. How do you prioritize and work out where your funding is going to go? Is it going to BAU? Is it going to innovation? We had the stat about how much of your budget goes to innovation. And so one of the realizations we had at Microsoft is that actually all activity is innovation, and we need to talk about it differently. So instead of talking about BAU, we talk about that as a different kind of innovation. Every piece of activity across the business is some kind of innovation. And so we want to look at how do we tie the language, creating that common language, creating opportunities for people to engage with it, both to our near-term and immediate innovation, as well as that visionary long-term innovation. And I said the term we use is full spectrum innovation, so that we can actually look at those bold visions and pathways to the moonshot innovation at the same time and in parallel to incremental innovation. And so the language we use, we talk about practical innovation, which is that near-term, iterative, and deployment-driven innovation, things that we're trying to do day to day, building on the product you already have iteratively, to a bigger purpose longer term. Those things become great breakthroughs eventually, but they are iterative. And so we focus on it. Our language is practical innovation. And then for us, we have that visionary innovation, which may be driven by different teams or supported in different ways, but that's the language we use to help build that common understanding within Microsoft. And so having that language is great, but we realized we needed to make innovation something that everyone could do. And so we thought about, how do you create innovation as a platform? And we believe that innovation can and should come from anyone and anywhere in the organisation, and both inside and outside of the business, as I said, that partnership piece is really key. And so we treat it as a platform. And the first one there, experiment, we have done so many things around this. You may have heard some of them. We do hackathons every year. The participation rate in our hackathon, we have an annual week every year where the whole business comes together and can hack on things. And the reason that's so powerful is it enables people who aren't technical to participate in innovation in a different way. It gives them access to these opportunities. And I think often innovation's left to the tech team, like that's the thing they do, that's great. But we've tried to create this opportunity for everyone to innovate and engage and participate. So for us, the hackathons is a big moment where we talk about it across the course of the year. And I was actually telling someone yesterday, one of the products that was created out of this 12 months ago is now available as a feature to all of you, and I loved it at the time. It was the ability to manage your parents' devices remotely. Don't know about anybody else, but how many of you get a call like, "Hi, can you fix my computer?" No. But that came out of a hackathon, and that's an amazing piece of innovation that didn't come from a technical team. It came from a team here in Australia who collaborated, and it was a whole lot of business people, and they were like, this is a problem we've got. And I love that because it's not a tech team, it wasn't engineering, it wasn't software devs, it was a group of people who were like, this is a problem, let's work out how we solve it. And so that experimentation is really critical for you to build innovation into your business. You've got to create a way so that people can step into it really easily and that there are opportunities for them to touch it throughout the year. We also have something we call the garage, which are physical spaces where people can come and do those little mini hacks together or attend sessions where they can learn something. Sometimes they're fixing toasters in there, sometimes they're building code. The idea of the garage is it can be anything to anyone at any time. So just spaces that actually build innovation in as part of the everyday. And then, of course, as I said, collaboration. How do you think about all functions and roles being part of that process end to end? How do you create spaces for them or ways for them to participate in this? And then how do you talk about the co-innovation you're doing with your customers, your partners, as well as within the business? And so for us, innovation's a really easy term to throw around, but how do you take that from an idea through to something that's actually an offering? And there's so much innovation, there are so many ideas within every organisation. We had to think about how do we take that full spectrum of innovation and then actually inculcate it? How do we make it real? How do we actually do something with it? Because there are millions and millions of ideas that come out. How do you find the ones that are real or actually do something to shift the business fundamentally? And so for us, we actually built in incubation as a key part of this. And so the innovation can come from anywhere. There are multiple levels and layers to that innovation and where it comes from. But incubation, we actually have a central team for. And so this is what our architecture looks like overall. This is Microsoft's innovation architecture. And you can see at the top there that common language we keep talking about and a framework. And so anyone who's worked with Microsoft at all, you'll hear us talk about horizons. We talk about the 3 horizons model. That's our language we have borrowed from the best, McKinsey and others. 3 horizons is how we think about innovation, both internally and in talking to our customers. So you've probably heard this from us if we have been working with you. And so we allocate resources. We think about what are those big bets that are far out in the distance that we want to take a chance on? What is the trend analysis? How do I look at all the different things that are happening across different industries, across different businesses, and work out what comes next? We then have that central incubation group. And we have multiple. We don't have just one incubation group, because again, if you have one, it's that central point of failure. We have multiple incubation groups. So we have communities who help incubate ideas. And then, as I said, innovation from anywhere. So I talked about the hacks, I talked about the garage. How do you build innovation moments into everything that happens in your organisation? And the the true language around it, the opportunity to talk about it more holistically. And so for us, it comes down to these three things. Thinking about innovation from anywhere, how do you put that into action? How do you think about tools as enablers and not gatekeepers? How do you make sure you're putting the right tools in place, but you're not blocking them then with all of those governance, security, funding challenges? How do you help people keep going as far as they can before you have to put the brakes on? And how do you create that common language? It's been really powerful for us over the last decade of this change that we've embedded within Microsoft. Is how do we think about a common language for innovation?